want, or when the show starts, I'll just come on back in if that's how you want to do it.
Oh, that sounds Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Turning a Moment into a Movement. I am J Love, your host. I represent the Justice for Gerard movement. Also, Gerard is my son who was wrongfully convicted of a crime that he didn't do. He went to prison and he served 2 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections for that crime, innocent and in prison. And so, because of that experience with Gerard, we created this platform called Turning a Moment into a Movement, where we come on every Friday at 6 p.m. and we bring awareness to wrongful convictions, injustice, and important topics that are really relevant to our community. So, thank you for joining us and welcome. Um, I want to say also give a shout out to those that are watching on YouTube as well as Twitter. Hello. And also my Facebook friends and all those that are members of the Justice for Gerard group on Facebook. I want to say hello to you guys as well. And I also want to let you know before we get started that if you would like to reach us, have a conversation, or you want to join in on the panel, or even come on to tell your story, please go to turning a moment into a movement at gmail.com. Again, that's turning a moment at gmail, turning a moment into a movement at gmail.com. And send us an email and we will get with you soon. So, um, while we're waiting for all the panel members to come on, I would like to bring on um, Edward. Hello.
Hello and good evening, J Love and audience.
Introduce yourself, Edward, and tell them everyone what it is that you do.
My name is Edward Sanders. I go by the name of Baraka. I am a practicing paralegal, uh, formerly employed with Washington County Prosecutors Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit. And while incarcerated myself, I acted as a jailhouse attorney for my fellow prisoners, residents of the facilities. uh, and since I've been home, I use my voice to take and advocate around criminal justice abolition as well as reform.
Yeah.
Abolition is my first reflection, beginning, and when it can't be abolished, then I look at where it may be reformed to take and bring about less harm that is caused by the thing. And thank you.
Thank you. And I also see who I haven't seen in a while, Allie. Hey,
Hello. Hi.
how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is that you're doing.
Yes, my name is Alexandria. I'm a community organizer for work. I work for Michigan Liberation as a Supreme Court organizer, basically educating and participating in research with community members so they can know about the Supreme Court, whether the state or the U.S. Supreme Court, and also organizing around mental health and human rights issues. So right now I'm more in Detroit, focusing on mental health, and yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, so you've been busy, super busy. What you been up to, Allie?
My
I
well,
know
oh
you
my,
got some stuff going on.
yeah. Lately, as of late, now the election's over, so things are slowing down a bit. Uh, During the election, it was all about educating people on our state Supreme Court and keeping them up to date on what's happening with the U.S. Supreme Court. And
Yeah,
it's a lot happening there, and I really just want people to understand how that's probably a more important seat than our president. Some would argue,
mhm,
um, and we have to be ahead of the game when it comes to the Supreme Court because they have a lifetime seat. Even the state Supreme Court has an 8-year seat, and we got the first Black Supreme Court justice, female justice, the first Black woman justice for Michigan, 14th woman to sit on the Michigan Supreme Court. Uh,
right.
so that's amazing. And, her qualifications match as well. Uh, I did a lot of town halls and organizing around education about her. And, the good part is that it's not just the representation piece. Her education and qualifications also meet that as well. So that is nice to know. Other than that, I've just been in Detroit, and honestly supporting on a lot of surveillance, policing surveillance initiatives and mental health initiatives with a coalition of others.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you saw, but the ShotSpotter technology being expanded into Detroit, we were in countless council meetings with multiple other groups pushing for that to not be expanded. And originally it was going to come from COVID funding, COVID ARPA funds, to be clear. And they changed that and said, okay, let's take it from the police funds, which is still not good because even in the ShopSpotter company policy, it says it does not decrease crime. It says that. So, um, that was expanded, unfortunately, but we are making strides on mental health in terms of non police, unarmed mental health mobile response teams. So that is, I'm hopeful for that.
Mhm.
And there is some support. So we shall see where that goes.
So I'm in my feelings about Shot Spotter,
Yeah.
the speaker in the sky that everybody is depending on to save the day. I see that I was reading that the Detroit Justice Center has a lawsuit about that.
Yes, they do. There is a lawsuit, and the claim on their end is that you know, there's an ordinance that they're in violation of. Is their claim? I'll need to look at the exact name of the ordinance, but it is pertaining to technology surveillance and transparency when presenting those things and informing the community. And there's a certain timeline you must do that under that ordinance instead of
Hmm.
just passing things and not informing people, not bringing the experts. Not there was us bringing information at meetings saying why they shouldn't have it. There was them pushing back. There was no experts or anything they brought particularly to say why it should be there to inform the community. And under that ordinance, the claim from Detroit Justice Center is that they violated that. So
Hmm.
that is pending right now. And yeah, with ShotSpotter, it wasn't it was us just presenting information.
Hmm.
And I think about transparency, and especially with surveillance, and that's in general just a violation to your community. So this is really it's about holding them accountable to the community.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Alexandra. I'm so glad you're here. I'm looking forward to your input on tonight's conversation. Dion said it's a waste of money. The Shot Spotter. Yeah, it is. $8 million.
Mhm.
Hi, Ravitia.
Well, hello there. How's everybody this evening?
All is
I'm
well.
so glad to make it in. I had was held up a bit. I gotta fix my lighting, but other than that, I'm good. Just glad to be here and talking about this subject. Um, being out here with social justice and taking time to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do personally. Right now, I know we have an event coming up through Michigan Coalition of Human Rights at Wayne State, and it's a collaborative effort. We're talking about the same issues, and it's time to hold people accountable. I am not only ministering, but also trying to allow people to, or give people the information to understand that they put a divide between us so that we don't stand on anything, so
Hmm.
that we don't come together. And I'm encouraging people not to take a side, but just to look at the facts and choose what is right. Choose what is going to make a difference in our community. $8 million is a lot of money. I know we could do something different with that money. I
It,
know we can.
yes, I'm sure
So
we
thanks
can.
for having
And
me on tonight.
Thank you, Ravitia.
then
So we have a guest.
just to be
Let me
clear,
see. Oh, go ahead,
I was going to just say really quick, it's the name of the ordinance. I found it. It's the Community Input over Government Surveillance Ordinance. Just wanted to mention that to be clear.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Um, Oh yeah, I see it in your all right, so let's see if Attorney Mac is Attorney Mac, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. Not
No,
able to. Hello.
no, go ahead. You good, Attorney Mac.
Okay. I apologize. Don't have my picture on right now. You know, Batman has got his secret underground enclosure. I have mine too. So, for the benefit and safety of my colleagues, I cannot show my face right now. So, but I will be joining you all face to face very soon.
Okay.
Uh, Hugo Mack, attorney at law, did not parachute down from heaven to be with you, but came up from hell through Jesus Christ to be with you. Amen.
Amen.
So I believe in justice. That's why I ran for Washtenaw County prosecutor in 2020. I know what it's like to pay a debt that's not owed. I know what it's like to be disbarred. I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know what it's like to spend 12 years with people telling me what to do and when to do it and almost how to do it. But coming out from that situation with integrity, and I thank God for that. So I'm dedicated to the fight for justice, to the plight of the wrongfully convicted, and we are every much a victim as somebody who had their house broken into, somebody been carjacked, somebody who been assaulted. We are every bit the victim as those poor souls, So my responsibility for the rest of my life is to bring exposure to not only the wrongfully convicted, but the overly convicted, the overly convicted. So I'm always put in my plug, and J Love ain't kicked me off the show yet. When you find yourself on Trouble Boulevard, the police and the prosecutors behind.
Uh-oh. Attorney Mac got kicked off on Mac Street, but anyway. Attorney Mac, www.hmatlaw.com, www.hmatlaw.com. He will be back. But while he's gone, we're going to bring in our guests as well. Hello, Thomas.
Good evening. Good evening. How is everybody?
All right. How are you?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I was gonna say they got him right out of there. He was getting ready to spill the beans and got him right out of the scene, huh?
Yeah. So introduce yourself, Thomas, and tell us everything that you do, because you do a lot. So.
Well, I'm Thomas Freeme. I'm down here in Tampa, Florida. I have a podcast, which you can just simply Google Thomas Freeme to get all those platforms. But more importantly, I have a foundation, which is called Coming Home Coalition. And I'm just coming at things differently. I've been incarcerated most of my life, in and out, since I was 13, 14 years old, juvenile to prison, out to federal prison. I got out 6 years ago. And the federal system really opened my eyes to, it just ripped the covers off everything that I knew to be true, but didn't want to believe until it was put in my face. And it was just, it was life-changing for me. So 24/7 I'm in this now, because I don't know how to put it any other way. This is slavery. And I'm trying to get people to understand that this is slavery. So that is what I'm doing. That's who I am.
Yes. And you have a great podcast on many platforms.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us all the platforms that you're on?
I'm on Apple, the Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio. Like I said, if you just Google Thomas Free Me as one word, Free Me, all my platforms will come up and you could just choose. But my hub is YouTube, of course.
Yes. So check Thomas out. What days do you come on?
So I go live with Demetrius Knuckleseel on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. with Thursday Night Get Right. And then I go Saturday night Cell Block. And that's at 8 p.m. as well, Eastern.
All right, guys. So make sure you check out Thomas, our guest today. And we're going to start the conversation. I see Attorney Mack is back, but I really, I'm going to bring him in. Attorney Mack, you back?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
hear you well. Okay.
Okay.
I finished you off and I let them know that you was on Mack Street and how to get.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, look, I've always counted on the kindness of my people to carry me through hard times.
Yes, we got your back, Attorney Mack.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm with you now. I'm with you.
Okay, cool. Before we get started, Attorney Matt, Edward has something that he wanted to bring to our attention. So go ahead, Edward, and then we're going to get on the subject.
And first, I want to also thank or congratulate Allie for her new role with Michigan Liberation, with taking court on the Michigan Supreme Court. And that's exactly what I want to make a comment in regards of the Supreme Court justice that have just been appointed by the governor. This work is very important, and it would serve us to have someone like Elliot who, and as opposed to our media and others who have different interests, they give misconceptions and misinformation, and it allows us to not be informed about our government. And there's been comments in regards of the qualification of this appointment. And there's one media personality that's pointing to the fact that this particular appointee has never sat in a trial court. Well, that's not a qualification to sit on the Michigan Supreme Court. And the public should take and understand that each of our venues in terms of the levels of our courts, from our trial court to our appellate court, which is normally referred to as an intermediary court, because it's in between the trial court and Supreme Court. Each one of them have a different criteria as to how they take and make decisions. The trial court obviously take and do just that. They hear trial matters. And in fact, there is a section that hear pretrial matters before it gets over to the trial court. And those matters are taken care of in another part of the court that is cut off from the trial court. They take care of all of the pretrial matters from arraignment to preliminary examinations to conferences between the prosecutor and the defense, and taking and trying to negotiate different arguments about what evidence should be allowed in, the proper charges, the jury instructions, etc., before it even get over to the trial court. Sometimes the trial court may revisit some of those decisions, but in any case, the matter from the trial court, you don't have a right to a judge in a trial court. You have a right to a jury trial. Anytime a judge taking sitting judgment of you, is that the judge is taking and using discretion. Your right to a jury trial is in the Constitution, not the right to a bench trial. That's a discretionary right. And even the matters that are heard in a trial court is not replicated in the appellate court or the Supreme Court. Appellate court, what we refer to as intermediary court, takes and hears. If you raised issues and you raise those issues timely and correctly by articulating exactly what you was complaining about, the appellate court would take and hear those issues and kind of referee, what they call Monday morning quarterback. But the Supreme Court doesn't do that. The Supreme Court would not hear ordinary arguments that get raised in a trial court. The Supreme Court hears issues relevant to the state's legislative schemes, the statutes forth that govern our laws. And in addition to that, and more important, they take, or just as equally important, they take a look at arguments around the state's constitution. Okay, these are the issues they look at. So they don't take and retry the case. In fact, most of the issues, if not all of the issues that most plaintiffs normally raise in a trial court, if they've been resolved in the Court of Appeals, more likely, and you come up to the Supreme Court, 9 out of 10, they won't hear most of those issues unless you point out to them that you have issues that directly affect the legislative scheme and or the state and or U.S. Constitution. And the only reason that they are listening to your arguments about the U.S. Constitution is that they want to try at it. They want their opportunity to answer any claims that your constitutional rights from in terms of the U.S. Constitution was violated. They want a chance to be able to correct it before you go off into the federal court and have the federal court to do it. So this is a difference. And if for a person that don't understand that, they'll say, oh, this person didn't practice law, never held court proceedings that are irrelevant. You're never taking address those type of issues. And it's a shame that most of our constitutional issues presently, or most of the issues that are heard in our Supreme Court, tend to take and be issues around business. You know, it tend to be economic issues. They're more concerned with issues that affect a minority of people's businesses than they are issues relevant to our human and our civil rights. Okay, that's what we need to take and have focus. And this particular appointee has a very unique background where her, in the manner in which she lost her father. And that lived experience is very important to the rest of us who have common experience like that, who takes and wake up every day and see loved ones, members of our community that are killed in the street while we're watching it on camera, and we are told to disregard it, don't believe our lying eyes. More cameras, and it's ironic that we putting up all these cameras that they're gonna ask us to ignore when it takes and show what the hell they doing. So thank you, I appreciate that very much. And let's get on with the show.
All right, Ali, you had a few things that you were saying. Go ahead before we get.
Yeah, I was saying, so there's never been anyone with legislative experience to sit on the Michigan Supreme Court, meaning until Kyra Bolden, meaning that there's never been anyone with experience drafting policy pertaining to a community, getting feedback from a community about policy and how to move forward on that policy. As a lawmaker that is, you know, key to what they do. So having that on the Supreme Court is significant because yes, the Supreme Court makes decisions that greatly affect our lives, but they don't have the experience of communicating with the public to the degree that you know, elected officials have to, or just to get votes. You know, it's not the same process. They're insulated, they're protected, they're shielded. Whereas an elected official, you know, you could go and see them at different events during election season. Like there's so many ways, and you know, and so that is significant because, you know, strangely enough, to have justices that don't have that legislative experience, but they're making decisions on things like reproductive rights is really like, I don't understand it. But I think this would turn the tide on that. I'll also say there is a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission that was established last year in June. Or no, it's not last year. It's about to be this year in June. I'm thinking next year. This year in June it was established. It's 26 people that sit on that of different various backgrounds. The co-chairs is Justice Elizabeth Welch and Appeals Court Judge Cynthia Stevens. It hasn't gone active yet in terms of duties. They are developing what issues that they'll pursue. pertaining to the Supreme Court and courts under the court. And they're supposed to become like active and start holding meetings next year. So that'll be interesting to see what comes of that and how that changes the courts.
All right. Thank you, Allie. So let's get on with the meat and the potatoes. Innocent, not guilty versus innocent. Your innocence is not a defense. So when I first heard that, I heard it when I was advocating for Gerard. I think he probably been in there a few months, and I was advocating, and I was told that innocence was a defense, and I was just like, "What are you talking about?" And so once I started understanding and studying and looking at it from a court point of view, I get it. And so today, because I see, we have so many in our communities that are advocating for loved ones that are wrongfully convicted, we need to understand not guilty versus innocence, and why innocence is not a defense. Is Attorney Matt back? So we're going to go ahead with this conversation. I'm going to start with you, Edward, and then we're going to go to Thomas.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. You hear? I was waiting for you to switch over to your other device. Are you switching over, Attorney Matt? All right, go ahead, Edward.
Okay, we are talking about the idea or the concept concerns around innocence. And the first thing I would like to point out is that the Murr Act has nothing to do with innocence.
I'm coming across as an echo.
You're not even coming across. We didn't hear you talking at all, Attorney Matt. I'm gonna kick it, Tiny Mac. Go ahead, Edward.
Okay, thank you. When we talk about innocent or guilt, we should never concentrate on the simple act itself. An act itself is not innocent or guilt. It has nothing to do with innocent or guilt. It's just that it's an act. It's an act. And most of our natural inclination to take and ask why is a proper thing. We normally, when we hear about behavior, we normally say, why? Why did the person do that? Well, actually, that's the proper thing to do, to make an inquiry. And what the law does, it takes an inquiry about what is called the mens rea. And this is not a common term. It's a term that's used in law, and I believe it's Latin. And Attorney Matt can correct me when he come on, but I believe it's Latin. And mens rea refers to the intent of the person. So because a person can commit an act and not necessarily have the same intent that it appears from your perspective. So they inquire into the person's intent. It becomes one of the elements of the crime. And these are components that are put into the inquiry by state legislators, for example, and state courts interpret what the legislator may have meant and how it applies. So again, this shows also the qualifications of this justice that we was just talking about. But this is an inquiry, and sometimes we don't know. Our perception of the other person is subjective. It's subjective. It's never objective. So what we try to do is listen to all of the evidence that we have, the circumstances and the situation in which the person committed a particular act. And then we try to even get the person explain to us why they done what they did, etc. And so we can try to arrive at an objective evaluation of what had occurred. And so not only is the question mens rea important, but also culpability. culpability. None of us take and try to get out of harm. Try to get out of responsibility by pointing out that somebody allowed the child to get away with it. Adult doesn't say, "Hey, but you let Joey do it." And Joey is like a child, and you adult. And the reason we don't allow adults to get away with things that we don't hold children accountable for is because the two of them have different, not only mens rea, but culpability. Even if the child had the intent, I want to hurt you, I want to kill you, you know that the child's culpability isn't equal to that of the adult because the lack of maturity of the child. The child is still developing. And he may want to kill you in terms of his vocabulary, but we know that the child hasn't even grasped yet what life and death is. He don't realize that life is permanent. It's not what you see on the cartoons where everybody is shooting each other and they get back up and move around. It's a permanent reality. And so we don't hold children accountable the way we do adults, or at least we didn't for a long time. But we got all of this mixed up because of our biases. Our biases constantly push us in the heat of the moment to push away the idea of mens rea. It causes us to push away the idea of culpability. And that's what open this conversation up with. And thank you.
All right. Thomas free me.
Yes, ma'am. So, that's he articulated it to the T, and that's pretty much it. Is there's a system that's put in place where these legislators, they create these tests or prongs, and each phase of your trial process has to meet these certain tests or prongs, and mens rea is one of them. Innocence has no standard in the courtroom. It has nothing. It has nothing to do with the courtroom. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with the courtroom and its process. It's just it's moot, as they would say. It's not a defense. There's you can't go into the court and say that you're innocent. That's not even a plea. It's not guilty. So it's when it comes to the two, for me, we're talking philosophically. What's the difference between not guilty and innocence? Mm-hmm. We have these guys that are getting out because in the appellate procedure now, you have actual innocence that you can claim on when you file with the governor or whatnot, you can file for actual innocence. And what that is, it's a complete different standard. And to prove innocence in court would be 100 times harder than it would be to prove not guilty. Not guilty is just one of the 12 have to not concur with the rest of the jury. And that could be lack of profession on the prosecutor, lack of evidence. There could be many, many things that occur within that not guilty verdict, but that does not mean that individual is innocent. It just means that they didn't provide enough of the standard to find this individual guilty. And that's the same with individuals that are coming out of prison, being found not guilty on wrongful convictions and such. That necessarily doesn't mean that the individual was innocent. That just means that somewhere along that line, there was an unconstitutionality that occurred that allowed for this individual to be not guilty, be it through the jury process or the appellate process. So that's pretty much all I have really with the innocence or not guilty.
Mm-hmm. Attorney Mack is back.
Once again, much apologies. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, you're great.
All right. Because of my technical difficulties, I did not get to hear everything that everyone said. So I don't know if I concur or not with what I heard. Some of the things I heard, I don't quite concur with. I think that's not quite accurate. So let me give you what what the deal is. And if it's repetitive, I apologize.
No, no problem.
Innocence is not a defense, it's a presumption. All right. There's a difference between a presumption and a defense. For example, if you're charged with assault and battery, okay, self-defense is a defense to an assault and battery charge, okay? A defense has got to be asserted. So for example, if you're charged with assault and battery, you and every other person in this country has got a right just to sit there. You don't have to make an opening statement. You don't have to put on evidence. You don't have to rebut anything. You don't have to testify. You don't have to do anything. And that is because you are presumed innocent. And it irks me every time I hear people, particularly my people, talk about, well, I got to get in court, man. You know, I'm going to prove my innocence. That's wrong. That's wrong. You are automatically putting a burden on yourself that you should not put on. So anytime a person gets into court and says, I'm going to prove my innocence, they put themselves behind the 8 ball to begin with. Because when you try to put yourself against the state of Michigan and you're saying, I'm going to prove my innocence, you've already lost 90% of the fight. So that's the first thing. Innocence is a presumption to be upheld. So, for example, in my jury selection and my voir dire, I am sure to have the judge poll the jury after that they've been seated and ask them, if you had to render a verdict right now in this case, what would it be? And every one of those jurors, if they understand the law, is supposed to say not guilty, because that's right. You're presumed not guilty coming into it. And that presumption of not guilty stays with you all throughout the trial. You never lose it, you know, and I try to lecture people on this all the time. Don't you dare take off that cloak, that mantle of not guilty. Don't you dare start acting like you have got to prove your innocence. That is not true. People can read body language. People can read you, you know. So now what happens is, as you all know, that presumption of innocence stays there unless and until the state proves beyond not a reasonable doubt, but beyond any reasonable doubt that each and every element of the offense has been established, okay? That each and every element, has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So the thing of it is that what's so important for people is to realize that, so when a person, most people are panicked and concerned in a trial, they say, well, I want to tell the jury I'm innocent. Okay, that's fine. But you've got to do more than that. Once you voluntarily talk about in front of the jury, I'm innocent, then you put the whole array into effect. So the other thing that I utilize as a criminal defense attorney is this, and I think one of the other speakers spoke about this. There's a difference between innocence and not guilty. If you notice, and you know, I lecture juries on this all the time, the verdict is not innocent or not innocent. There's a reason for that. The verdict is guilty or not guilty, because the truth of the matter is 99.99% of the people that are charged, they were at least there or in the area, okay? I mean, there are people that simply are victims of mistaken identity. They weren't anywhere near as that. But 99.9% of the time, they were in the area or somehow involved. So when people talk about, well, I'm innocent, well, no, you may not be innocent. You know, you may be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You may be under the influence of drugs. You may be under the influence of somebody else. You may be pissed off at something. There may be something that you did to contribute to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It doesn't mean you committed a crime. It just means you're there in the wrong place at the wrong time. So anytime I have a client that wants me to tell the jury I'm innocent, that's a big mistake. Because when people look at innocence, they want to see you were in Utah when the crime occurred. That's what they want to see. If you start letting them talk about, well, he admits he was there now. Well, you know, he admits he saw the gun now. Well, he admits he was pissed off at somebody now. See, that puts a big bucket of water on a flame of innocence. So that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The only issues are, has the state proven each and every element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt? So I tell juries all the time, you should find this person not guilty, not because you think they're pure as driven snow, but because the state has not proven each and every element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I tell juries all the time, you may have a hunch the person is guilty. You may feel by preponderance of evidence the person is guilty. You may feel by clear and convincing evidence the person is guilty. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if you are clearly convinced that man or woman is guilty, if you use that standard, you have no legal choice but to return a verdict of not guilty. Because proof beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest legal standard in the nation. So if you're at an arraignment, standard is very low, probable cause. Well, did Mr. Mack probably do it? Yeah, he did. He's probably, okay, I'm buying it over, okay? If a person is the state is trying to remove somebody's parental rights, are you clearly convinced this person's parental rights ought to be terminated? Yes, that's clear and convincing. But none of that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So my point is, the best tact and the only tact to use is never give up the presumption of innocence. And like I said, when I'm in closing argument to the jury, I remind them, before this case started, all of you said you presume this man or woman to be not guilty. You presume it. And I asked them, what's happened to change your mind?
Attorney Mack, I want to go back to something someone said. I'm going through, you guys, I'm going to get to your questions. What was it? It was, hold on, you guys. This one right here. So innocence is like an emotion. Whether or not guilty will be based on data that is measurable by some metric standard. Attorney Mack.
Well, no. Innocence is not just an emotion. It's presumed innocence is a fact. It's a legal maxim. It's a fact. It's a pillar upon which the criminal justice system is based on. No, it's not emotions. Emotions come and go. See, that's the problem with juries today. They decide cases emotionally. We heard so much in the media about this axe murderer or somebody shot somebody 5 times in the head and we not safe in the streets and we got to do something to, put these black devils away. That's emotion. No. The presumption of innocence is not emotional. It's not. It's sterile. It's like a ladder. It exists. So no, it's not emotional. But that ladder will stay standing there unless somebody knocks it over beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Attorney Mack, how can we protect our innocence all the way up until our trial? And what I mean by that is, by the time we get to our trial, we've already been slandered through the news. We've already been drugged. Half the community already knows that we're guilty before we even get to trial. So how can we deter? How can we stay out of the news? How can we have ourselves not broadcasted to the community before we even have a chance to be arraigned?
Excellent question. And I'm going to tell you, in my decades of doing this line of work, one of the biggest problems my client has is their mouth. Okay? First and foremost, I tell people all the time, the first responders to your constitutional and civil rights is not the prosecutor, it's not the trial judge, it's not the Michigan Supreme Court, it's the police officer. The police officer, okay? The person that you come in contact with. 99.9% of the time, your case is made or sunk by you opening your mouth, by you thinking you can talk your way out of a situation with Officer Good Cop who comes to rescue you from Officer Bad Cop, okay? Okay? And the thing of it is, you have to understand something. Under the law, the United States Supreme Court has said it is okay for police to deceive you. It is okay to deceive you. All right. Now, they're not supposed to deceive you on a material fact, but what a material fact is something like drawing a line in the sand. It's impossible to define with any certainty. So you've all seen the episodes of Law and Order SVU. Well, your buddy came in and he told everything. Now it's a race to the prosecutor's office. Who's gonna inform first? Oh, Kareem told you that. Oh, well, let me tell you what really happened. Well, see, there you go, and see. So that's the first thing. But your question is deeper than that, because your question involves the First Amendment itself. The First Amendment itself. And the right to oppress and the right to free speech. And it's very difficult to sue a prosecutor. Okay, they've got immunity up the behind. So what I'm saying is, for statements and pretrial statements that are made by prosecutors, people with tremendous authority, and people listen to, by statements that are made by chiefs of police, okay, with tremendous authority and listen to, okay, by the grieving mother who says this monster butchered my poor boy, there's no way to stop that. There is no way to stop that. And you're right. A lot of times people will come in on a jury panel, they've seen something on the news, particularly when it's race-based, I might add, and I'm talking about Black people here in case y'all ain't figured that out, where they have an attitude about Black people, particularly Black men, I might add, as predatory, as virile, as stalkers of white women. These sorts of things predominate. And you say, well, if a gorilla is loose in the jungle, he'll do any damn thing. So that's what we've got to overcome. So we're dealing with systemic racism, not just within the criminal justice system. We're dealing with systemic racism in the media itself, on who they choose to cover and how they choose to cover. So, the only thing we can do, man, is swing for the fences when we get our turn at bat. But everything you say is legitimate, and it's a hell of a mojo, man. It is.
Reverend Tia, you had a question. We ain't heard from you yet.
Well, I was really feeling this, and I like what Alexandria just said, that U.S. Supreme Court also said police are not obligated to protect people from harm. And I think this is the idea that's going on in when you talked about the media. We have to understand that the language within the media is very important. That they purposely use propagated language in society and in social media that that really go against people who are underserved, minorities, and I don't like to use that word, but people of color, because the word minority is something that was contrived to further separate us, and to me, it makes people more accepting the role of a victim. I never say that I am a victim, because I'm not. I believe that we are most powerful. I believe that we are at a time where people are waking up, people are coming together. And I'm going to stand on that even when some people are not. But it is important to protect innocent or punish the guilty. This is what the question is. This is what's in the academic papers. They ask, and this is what they ask: is it more important to protect innocent or punish the guilty? Now, how does that sound? When you put this question to people in society, now they're having to choose a side. And see,
Correct.
we have to begin to understand that in this dispensation, people and media and people in leadership are constantly causing division and making it so that we have to choose a side. This is the
Correct.
divisive nature, and
That's right.
this is what I come against all the time. You have to know when you are being utilized as a pawn. So
Right.
if they ask you, what is more important, honey? Do you want to protect the innocent or punish the guilty? And so if your answer is punish the guilty, then you have just punished everybody. People
Yeah.
now going to prison because you could not stand and say we want to protect the innocent. We should all want to protect the innocent. And if we really are protecting all innocent, then guilty, punishing guilty, that's just what will definitely happen. But that's not what the goal is.
Go ahead, Attorney Mack.
Yeah. See, Tia, God bless you, my sister. Okay. Look, first of all, and everybody listen up, please. Don't anybody let yourself get suckered into that narrative, because they're trying to make you have a false equivalency or a false determination. That's a trap. Don't fall into it. The two are related. You do them both at the same time. You are not guilty if each and every element of the offense is not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. When you uphold that standard and make the state meet that standard, you've already protected the innocent. You've already done it. Because I'm trying to explain, the greatest thug, the greatest threat you have is not somebody on a corner with a switchblade or even a gun. The greatest threat to you is a government that is turned loose on you, because you're not paying the man on the street corner with a gun to rob you. You are not paying the woman on the street corner with a beer bottle to hit you upside your head and take your wallet. You are not paying somebody to break in your house. But a state unleashed on you, where prosecutorial misconduct is overlooked as harmless error, you are not allowing the government to violate you, to rape you. You are paying for the privilege of being raped. You understand? You're paying for the privilege of being raped. That's the difference here, folks. That's the difference. So anytime that issue comes up about what do you want to do, protect the innocent or punish the guilty, we be sure that nobody is sent to prison unless they've been convicted by proof beyond any reasonable doubt. That's how we protect the innocent. That's how. That's our first and fundamental step right there.
So, Attorney Mack, or whoever want to take this question, Dion said in most cases of guilt, they will offer you a plea. Why is that? And if you think you are innocent and you go to trial, you get more time. Go ahead, Thomas. Thomas, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I mute myself so I don't, no background noise filters in. But so I have a case out in Texas, Trent, Texas, of the kid's name is Kevin Bowers. He was falsely arrested in a group arrest of a robbery. He walked in, and some teens walked into a little, like a Dave and Buster's type place with a little game room. Walked in right behind him, robbed the place, and the police came in and arrested everybody that walked in at the same time for robbery. Now, Kevin Bowers has never been arrested in his life. He's worked his whole life since he was 15 years old. He just got a new job, and he was going out to celebrate his new job or whatnot, and this happened to him on August 16th. This man sat in jail, right? They gave him a $100,000 bond. He has been in jail and only talked to his attorney on the initial visit the first time, right? His attorney never went back out and talked to him since. This kid has already attempted suicide. He's never been in this environment in his life, you know, and he is at the point, he was getting to the point, we got a new attorney on him now, but he was getting to the point where he said, man, if my attorney comes in with a plea right now, I'll take it. To answer your question, this plea bargain is extortion. It's absolute extortion. And these prosecutors, because of the immunity and the power that they have, they use this extortion by locking people up in these horrendous environments, holding them on this astronomical bail system when a person couldn't get out on $10,000 bail, but they're slapping $100,000 on them. And they're holding these people in there as an extortive purpose, because in my opinion, they're trying to control the poor communities through felony conviction, because you lose your voting rights, you lose your gun rights. And in order to get those restored, you have to go in front of a judge to be approved for that. So it's all about control. At the end of the day, history shows government is about control. We can sit here and talk about division. We can talk about all the applications of division. But until we, the people, wake the hell up and understand what they're doing and stop selling drugs to each other, stop killing each other, stop committing crimes against each other, stop hating each other because of this person's darker than me or whatever, and come together and realize what these people have been trying to do since the inception. When I try to explain to people that law came before crime, crime did not come first. These people created law, which then created the crime, right? And that is where this prison industrial system, the system spawned from. And until the American citizen, your blue collar, every day, I want this person locked up, he's a bad person. Until this person understands that law came before crime, they're never going to understand what we're sitting here talking about now.
Right.
I agree. You know, can I make a statement, J-Lo?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony Matt.
See, no, I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay. You know, and see, the thing of it is that part of the problem, and my conversations tend to be Afrocentric, okay? And I don't apologize for that, okay? My conversation will stop being Afrocentric when race is no longer a factor in the holding down of people of color, okay? So as long as that dynamic of racism continues, my conversation will be Afrocentric. So when people say, oh, get over it, stop talking about it, no, we got to keep talking about it because the problem is still here.
Right.
The problem is here. But part of it, and I agree with what the gentleman said, is that we have to learn to discipline and love ourselves, okay? Love ourselves, okay? And because part of it is, if you notice, a lot of times when we've had people with mental health challenges, all right, where the police have been called, it's like a family member doing the calling, okay? You know, Tyrone in here cutting up with a knife. Well, the police are not social workers. They're not therapists. They're not intervention experts. They are trained as soldiers, and a soldier's job is to kill. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so what I'm saying is that when we start, addressing ourselves, and I don't know if we've got to have, the way the communities used to look out for themselves and watch out, and stuff like that. We lost something. I don't know. We lost. Black people, we lost something, and I've said it before, that Black people are the most obliging people in America, willing to sacrifice the most to try to prove somebody who doesn't like you anyway that you love them and what they stand for and you want to be an American, So we go to wars, we die disproportionately to other people in wars, okay? We come back, we face the greatest discrimination of other people, other than perhaps the Native Americans, okay? And yet and still, while we maintain our rights and our pride in America, we don't make America respect us. Okay, we really don't. Okay, Detroit is the blackest city in America. Yet 17% of the people vote. And they say we don't like the mayor. We don't do this. Well, did you vote? No. Well, okay. So it's part of self-hate. And when I look at my people and how we can gloat and be happy seeing the demise of another Black person. Well, if you didn't shouldn't you do the crime if you don't want to do the time and that. You don't know that person's circumstance. You don't know what happened in their life. You don't know that. So what you do is you stand in the company of people sneering and jeering and putting down other Black people, and I just want to get very personal here. In my campaign for Washtenaw County prosecutor, I had more resistance and vitriol response from Black people than whites. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Oh, you've been in the penitentiary. Who the hell you think you are running for prosecutor, jailbird? See, no white person had the courage to say that to me, but Black people did. Black people did. We've got to stop hating ourselves, okay? And addressing people who truly want us dead, and until we start loving ourselves, we can't expect other people to love us. We really can't. We shouldn't.
You're right, Attorney Matt.
You,
I hear it all the time, those narratives. We repeat those narratives. And so how can we get reformed and change if we are guilty our own selves of repeating narratives? Go ahead. Who is that?
well, the way, like for me personally, in my school of knowledge, my school of training that I've pretty much taught myself and my research, I'm really trying to eliminate the word white and Black from my vocabulary, because the whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. And the more that we even use these words, is the more the word itself is the division. The word itself is the lie. And when you go back throughout history, through ancient texts, right, these people weren't describing each other using Black or white. It just became like everything else. People wanted efficiency. They wanted shortcuts. They wanted to label something to put it in a group. And then when you go back and you research the history of how this lie even came into to be, it's for me, and it's just eliminating it altogether. The way that I look like, yes, Black people are tired. I can understand why a Black person in front of me is angry or doesn't trust me or doesn't want anything to do with me. I understand that as this white person, this American white person. And therefore, for me, it's like, man, listen, let me carry some weight for you. Let me help you, because I understand the burdens that you and your family and your generations have been through, right? And this to me is how all of us really need to come together and understand each individual's plight of what they went through, and just stop mimicking people. Half 3/4 of this country is running around citing other people's information that they've never even researched. They just parrot things. The whole country's gone mad. I mean, for real.
Alexander?
Yeah,
Alexander?
yeah, yeah, you good. I was gonna say, thinking about race itself in America, and defining race, different categorization, that's a social construct, was created. I know, what's his name? Johann Blumenbach is who created the system of labels for different races. So Caucasian, or calling Native Americans Redskins, and even African American, that all those things, in Negro, and those things were created by someone who is Caucasian, who was not pro-Black, was not pro any person of color. And that is part of why we're here today. Blackness is a diaspora. It is not one set of things, and it is not one place. And I personally believe in embracing the word Black and being Black and Black excellence, and versus African American, because not every Black person is from Africa. Some are from Jamaica and other places. It's a diaspora. Yeah.
Edward?
I am going to take and try to stay on the issue of this innocent concern, because I know that most people, most Americans, whether you Black, we incapable of taking and purely speaking about race. Um, I took and paid particular attention during the protests this past summer. Most people were pulling down statues, rightfully so, of former generals of Confederate Army that that was for the destruction of this nation, and who were vile racists, and they were willing to pull their image down, but they wasn't willing to take that cross from around their neck. Not just simply the cross, but I'm talking about what's on that cross, an image of another human being that's quite different from you. In fact, it looked just like the human being that put you in slavery for the last several hundred years. You had no inclination to get rid of that blue eyes and blonde hair that you take and put up on your wall. So that tells me right there that you didn't have the guts to really take and change your environment, because the most potent environment in America's culture that divide us all is the idea of another human being as a deity, as God. That's and for us as people of color, one that represents the image of the same person that done put his or her foot on your damn neck. That's child abuse. If you got a child being raised in a house like that, and you wonder why your child don't take and love him or herself, that's your form of child abuse right there that you got on your wall. And if you wonder why every ethnic group that comes to this country, they start off somebody else, but not too long after they hear, they become white. They become white. Is a migration, not just to take and become Americans, but to become white Americans. Jews come here and they first, and then they're white Jews. Okay, Hispanics come here. They come here as Hispanics or somebody from Latin, South Central, and North America. They start off like that, but then later they define themselves as white. Everything about this culture is to tell you either white or black. You either with us or you against us. That message is there in this country. Most of us don't want to take and talk about that. Okay, most of us can't deal with that. We think it's an attack on our religion. But remember, your religion was racialized. Your religion was racialized. We're not talking about repudiating Christ. We ain't talking about his gospel, because ain't nothing they doing or saying has anything to do with his gospel. When you take and put forth an image of a human being, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're addressing. This is not an attack on anybody's race. But I would like to, because I know this conversation we ain't gonna deal with that conversation in a mature way. Okay, that's the biggest racial divide in this country, is taking and putting an image of a human being supposedly as the divine. That would separate us all the time. Okay, whether it's supposed to be the image of God or God the Son or the baby, it still divides us. We don't need an image of a person to be able to worship. That is an effort to take and present one race as a superior and the other one as an inferior. All the heavens are all the occupants of heaven are white. And so what is that telling you? Subliminally, what is that telling you? If all of the hosts of the heavens are white, then who's down in hell? Who's in hell? Okay, so, but in any case, you really, please just stay away from that one, because we probably didn't had half of the audience click off because it's too emotional and hard and difficult for them to even deal with that.
But that's the problem though, right? That's the problem. And that's because we're not getting these conversations out because people can't handle the conversation. And I get it. The first time I watched Malcolm X, right? I couldn't get through the intro, right? The second time I watched it, I got a little through the intro, got a little into it, and I'm like, man, I'm just not watching this racist crap, Like, why? And it's just the standard ignorance. But once I got through it the third time, right, I marveled at Spike Lee's brilliance in what he did, because if I couldn't sit through that intro alone, then I had no business even watching the movie to understand who the man was to begin with, right? Because Spike Lee put the truth in your face. So it was me understanding and just being honest with facts. That's all it is just be honest with the facts. Now, when it comes to the racism and the innocence and the guilty, all of this plays a factor as well, because you have Temujin Kinsu. You have Temujin Kinsu, who's been incarcerated for 40 years. Everybody in the world knows this guy is innocent. Why is he not out? But yet these officials have about 5 or 6 black people that they string around in front of them, talking about these are the people, this is the program that we're setting up, this is what we're doing, look at all the great things that we're doing, and nobody's seeing behind the doors of what is really going on when we have actual innocence. And this is going on all over the nation, again, because at the end of the day, it's all about control of the votes. All these people care about is control of the votes.
That's right. That's right. And I want to chime in because it's really important that we look at history, world history as a whole. And if you really looked at history, if you knew your history, if you really just go on Wikipedia and just look at the timeline. And what you see is the steady flow of divisiveness used to annihilate people and all the different, now it's not just one kind of genocide going on here. There are all kinds of genocides all over the world. Look it up. Mass genocide efforts to decrease populations. Just, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about decades, centuries of annihilating people, of pitting one against the other. But see, when you know who you are, see, I can stand before you and I can say, oh, yeah, I'm Ethiopian. Why? Because I know my history. Now, I'm not just Ethiopian. Okay. Now, check it out. I'm going to go ahead and for those of you who may not know, so I'm a Little John. Our heritage is Ethiopian, Northern Ethiopian, present day Eritrea. Now, I have pictures of my great grandmother and great grandfather. Where were they? They were in South Carolina. How was it that my grandfather was labeled Negro, but his grandmother was white? How was that? Okay, so if you knew the history of of Native Americans, because my grandfather was pushed to South Carolina, those Carolinas, those were for the darker natives. And my grandmother is extremely light, and they got married in Tennessee, and she was Blackfoot. He was Cherokee. Okay, he was considered Cherokee, but if you look at this picture, he just looks like an Ethiopian. So the word Negro did not come around till way late in the game. Black people didn't call, I don't even call myself that, but I'm just saying people of color did not call each other black. They were people of the land. They were people of the land. And so what happened was when you look at the term mulatto, when did the first term mulatto come out? It came out because people who had traveled in from Europe or whatever had mated with native women. And I'm using the word mate lightly. Okay, so the lighter ones, they started to divide the natives according to color. So don't tell me to go home to Africa. Yeah, some of my people are Ethiopian. Yeah, but some of my people were already here. So when you know this, then sometimes that person who they consider white, if you look at the Little Johns, you see all colors. You see all colors. Because if two of them got together, sometimes that person came out really light. I can't hate nobody. But what I will not do is allow ignorance to lead. See, it's just a divisive measure that we accepted and we went along with it and we carried the narrative. But when we stop it ourselves, when we stop it and when we decide to get some knowledge, read your history, and not just the history that's given to you, go back through the books, check out the maps, see how the maps changed, see how the labels changed. You think they're getting rid of books today.
Hmm.
You think they didn't get rid of books before? You think they didn't change dictionaries before? You don't think they didn't change statues before? It's
Right.
time for us to wake up and make a decision today and say, I'm going to stand for righteousness. I don't care what color you are, but when it comes to the wrongfully convicted, these are people who are all underserved. And if you are not taking a stand for righteousness, you can't walk with me.
Yeah.
Amen. Power. And the power in that right there in itself is again knowledge. The woman is telling us understand history, and you'll know that this is classism. It has nothing to do with race. We are making it race because they have devised it so it looks that way. But the whole scheme is classism. It's always been about the poor working to keep the rich rich. That's what it always has been. That's what it has always been. Racism is new. This stuff is only 5, 6, 7, 800 years old. This is why I say my daughter's mixed, and she used to call herself African American, and like the woman has said, no, baby, no. If anything, you call yourself black. One, because you're not African. You know what I mean? But most importantly, right, you're not a slash. If you notice, I'm not European American. I'm not German American. You know what I mean? I'm just American, but yet you have Cuban Americans, you have Latino Americans, you have African Americans. Again, it is all of the implementations of division that they put in every aspect to keep us divided. This is chess. This is what I'm trying to get our communities to understand. It is classism. If we're going to tear down this prison industrial system, we have to realize that this is slavery that they're putting the poor class into. It just so happens that because of the racial aspect of American history, majority of black people are in the poor communities. So that they're attacking the poor communities, majority of the black people are going to be in prison. You know, I was explaining to somebody the other day, let me just tell this and I'll step aside because I know I've been taking a minute, but what I'm seeing is that when we're born into debt. These people have created such a national debt, right? We're born into debt. That's slavery in itself. We're born into slavery, right? We're born into debt. We're given this zip codes, we're given social security numbers, we're given birth certificates. And the government had devised a plan, right? Created this system that if it feels that this individual is not going to contribute his life's money towards this national debt, we can incarcerate this individual and get more out of him towards this debt than he would produce as a free person. More than likely, he will end up costing more money than he would make through his lifetime. But if we incarcerate him, we can that's slave labor. We can generate so much money out of that individual. And this is what they're doing across America.
If I may take an
Go ahead.
one of the worst things that we are doing, like say here in the state of Michigan, the Upper Peninsula is its economy. I guess Tookie made mention early on about Detroit, where Detroit used to have this bustling economy, and it gave birth to this nation's. But industry is gone. There were multiple factors that resulted into the auto industry taking in its decline, with the other nations beginning to manufacture cars and the different materials that we were using to manufacture cars, from steel to aluminum and plastic. all this changed the dynamics of the manufacturing of cars. Other nations having different economies and they cost of living being different. It changed who were the suppliers and the the consumers. But here in Michigan, as a result of a lot of this, we done took and substitute formula that Southern whites had to take and sustain their economy. And that was to rely and insist on using Black people as a means of exploitation. They embedded that, they engrined that in the US Constitution. That's in the clause. Even though supposedly they lost the war, they were able to take and get that clause in the 13th Amendment, except those who are lawfully convicted and sentenced, you know. And we kind of shamelessly celebrate the top half of that 13th Amendment without making mention of that clause. But any competent attorney would tell you, read the clause. Read the clause. Anytime you got a constitution, you got a contract, you read the clause in the contract. But we take and we don't even teach it in school. Some people's are shocked to even know when we tell them it's in the 13th Amendment. There's a clause in there that talks about maintaining a person's servitude if they are convicted and sentenced. And this became the vehicle of why we convict and sentence people. It racialized our judicial process, our so-called criminal justice process, in taking and having that there. That's why it's so important to advocate a movement, not just to take and be prostituted by politicians to get our vote to talk about it. It has to be changed to take and heal this nation. One of the things that I was trying to get to is that the relationship that we have here in Michigan, you got a whole population in the UP. The only relationship that they have with Black people is that they come up there and change. How could that be good for our state? Is one half of the state the only time and the only interaction they have with Black people is that they come to the UP, they come up to the Europe, the Upper Peninsula in chain, you know, with leg irons and belly irons. That's the only way they see them. The first African American director of the Department of Correction, he had the nerve to brag about this. He's the director of the MDOC, and he was bragging that we are the largest employer in the UP. And he's true. The MDOC is the largest employer in the UP, but that's nothing for African Americans to be proud of, because their item is African Americans. Anytime we begin to talk about prison abolition and reform, they're not concerned with the harm that this system is causing us. They're concerned about their jobs. They can give a damn that there's no crime. They want you to find some crime. They want you to create some crime. Create those laws that take in, like my man say, those laws that take and say that whatever that guy doing is a crime. To give us that population. This is the relationship, the shameful relationship that we have with each other in the state of Michigan, Blacks and whites. We had a relationship that they are demanding to be employed by us. And even African Americans who work in our criminal justice system, they have become brainwashed to it. If they run for office, they're thinking about how many more jobs I can create around what we're doing in this industry. They ain't thinking about, I need to stop this stuff. It's taking and breaking up the families and the communities that I live in. You know, we have a disproportion women in the African American community in terms of those who are free and those who are captive. Our situation looks just like apartheid, okay? Particularly before Nelson Mandela came out of prison in South Africa, where all of the women were living on plantations in South Africa and the men were in prison. We have the same situation here in the United States, and particularly here in Michigan. We have an apartheid. We have an apartheid. We
Mhm.
have blacks that live predominantly in the Detroit area, and the households are predominantly ran and operated by black women. White men are still afraid to take and have black men in their industries, in their place of businesses, in their workplaces. So they hire our black women, and it continue to create a damn division between us. And then we have to deal with the many different philosophies and ideologies that they come up with and positionalities in terms of their sexualities. We are dealing with many of the white ideas about sexuality where our women are now telling us they're born that way. You know, that I'm this particular orientation. Well, we don't even have, in terms of the proportion, we're not talking about the larger population. We're talking about this smaller group of African Americans. So even if we were to come home from prison today, there is a distance now that's been created by white people in black people's communities. You know, our sexualities don't even match up no more. Daddy come home to mama's babies is a different situation. Mama gone with somebody else now. She's gone with a member of her own sex, just like you were doing in the penitentiary. You know, so all of this stuff, prison has an effect on all of this. And we are continuously taking and closing our eyes to this reality. I tried to share this with social work where everybody was talking about having been born that way, and I took and tried to weigh in. I meant no harm to anybody. I meant to not to cause anybody harm, but I reminded them not everybody arrived at this experience the same way. There are people here in the state prison because they were molested and raped by their own parents, you know, and they growed up in that condition. They growed up, you know, rebuking that other member, the opposite sex, because the opposite sex that abused them was their own parent. You know, and sometimes you have to remind people that when they want to take and feel themselves and say, oh, I was really born this way. Well, how about the child that was molested by the priest? How about the child that was abused by the person in a law enforcement uniform? How about the person that was abused by his teacher, by his parent, by his uncle, by his grandfather? These are social issues that we can't take and just sweep under the rug by claiming that somehow we were born this way. How about, you know, then that takes away from me to be able to speak about some of the social harms that exist in our society. It tells me that I can't share my lived experience. I can't tell you how I got there or how I experienced that. You know, and when I say me, I'm talking about hundreds or thousands of people that live in our society that have different experiences as to how they got to where they are.
I I like what Charity just posted and said, prisons do not disappear social problems, they disappear human beings, homelessness, unemployment, drug addiction, mental illness, and illiteracy. And see, these problems, like Baraka just said, you know, are continue even in prison. So people are not, there's no rehabilitation, there's no means to successful recovery from mental illness. They actually, you know, in terms of mental health, um, psychologists and mental health and behavioral workers are now stating, you know, that recovery is a possibility. We talk about recovery, and but in the prison behind those walls, and they tell you that people come out worse than what they went in. And Thomas, I just want to just mention, you were talking about Texas, and I had an opportunity to go to Texas and do some ministry in one of the youth prisons. Well, it was the youth detention, and thousands of youth um, behind bars in Texas. And you know, Texas, of course, is the largest prison system. Um, 17 state jails, 14 private contractors, 16 counties throughout the state, and it's 220 over 225 million that goes to pay for the payroll for Texas prisons. And the thing about what people don't understand is when I went there, the young I did a basketball camp there, and did a 1 day camp. Probably not probably, it was the best basketball camp I ever did in my life with those young boys. Sad to say, most of them were waiting to age out from there and go directly to prison as an adult. And this is what people don't understand. I was able to witness that directly.
Amen.
And, wanted to talk to, some of them I said, well, when are you getting out? Was hoping I would hear. And most of them were saying, no, we're going to be here a long time. But if I get out, you think I can play when I get out? These young boys, under 18, were just there, thousands, waiting.
This is the system.
Yeah.
This is the system. This is a prison industrial system, and I don't know how else to put it. This is slavery. It's a design. This is why I quit saying that the system is broken. This is why I changed my whole narrative. I don't have my followers, my loyalists out with signs in front of buildings and things like that, because I understand the complexity of what we're dealing with now. We have to go in and rewrite the 13th Amendment off the gate, out of the rip, right? We have to take out the whole part about slavery, but it'll never happen.
Yeah, that was just on the ballot in some states. I think for this past election, 4 states in the United States got rid of slavery, and I think Louisiana voted against it. But I know we having these conversations, and they're very important because they're eye openers. They're eye openers to the system, and even when we're talking about the basis where we came here about guilty, not guilty versus innocence. We really had to understand, and that's why we're here on Fridays at 6:00, because we really have to understand what we're dealing with. It's just not, it's more than being innocent. You have to do the work to prove yourself not guilty. And so that's why I wanted us to talk about this. That's why I wanted Attorney Mack to really make it clear to us that it's, this, when you're the person against the entire versus the entire state of Michigan, that means everything that Michigan has is against you.
Right.
Well,
the federal government. Don't forget that, everybody, and the federal government, because they've got task forces that are state and federal. You understand? State and federal. The Washtenaw County prosecutor has got access to the most advanced crime lab in the state of Michigan. Okay, the Michigan State Police Crime Lab is the most advanced crime lab in the state. All right, and they've got access to the federal government, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So, excuse me, dear love, I had to say that. And the federal government, the full resource of the federal government. It's no longer Hugo Mack versus John Smith. It's actually the United States and its subsection, state of Michigan, against Hugo Mack. That's what it is.
Right. So it's bigger than, the whole process is bigger than whether you're innocent. Because you got
the whole process is unconstitutional.
Well,
the whole process is unconstitutional. I'm told that I'm presumed innocent until guilty, but the process doesn't show that. Right. Because the process has already made me guilty before I even get in to say I'm innocent or guilty. You know, and again, that is by design. One thing I've learned about these people, they are about are pacification. That's all the 13th Amendment was about pacification. They didn't want to free the slaves. They wanted to pacify the people because of the taxation that was going on. They were trying to tax the South on the free labor that they were getting on all their stuff coming out of the South. They wasn't having it. It was over money. It was over taxes. And this man knew that he had to get these people to stop fighting and killing each other and get them back to work. What do the people want? We want to end slavery. Okay, well, let's write this up and let's call it incarceration now, conviction, right? And then this is where all your Jim Crow laws came from. So
that's the whole thing was that was the foundation for the police. You know?
Right. So it was me understanding that. This is why I'll never commit another crime again, because now I understand what crime is. They want me committing crime. This is what I'm trying to explain to the youth out here, the drug dealers, the gangbangers. They want you doing this. You think you're bucking the system, but you're doing exactly what they want you to do. Because like Tony Montana said, they need the bad guy. Because with all due respect to Mr. Ward, but without me, there would be no him. There would be no system. They need me to put me up in front of the cameras to say, I'm the bad guy. This is why we need prisons. This is why we need police, for people like this. So if I don't allow myself to be that puppet, then who are they going to use? This is what I'm trying to get the youth to understand. Don't be these people's puppet. They need you to put you on cops. They need you in the cells so they can show you going crazy in the cells. They need you doing these things so that they can get all this funding in for the police. They can build all of these prisons, spend all of this money. Where does all this money go? All the money that these prisons are generating each year, where does it go? I've never heard anybody audit. I've never heard no financial statements. Where is these billions and billions and billions of dollars going?
It's making people rich. That's where it's going.
Still the stock market, boo.
I just had this thought before I come on the show, and I'm glad it came back to me, right? We noticed, right, when Joe Biden signed off on the private prison thing, which is a farce, right? They're all private prisons. It's all for profit prisons. But when he did that, I noticed that corporations, big companies, started moving their businesses overseas to the slave laborers overseas. A lot of these businesses started then going overseas when these prisons started shutting down. Just a coincidence I saw, and I don't believe in coincidences, but.
If I may take and make mention, and first, I really appreciate particularly the show started off, excellent. I like the comments that everyone made. And Mac, you did an excellent job in illustrating to us about innocence and not taking, and that it's not relevant. But I do want to take and make mention the charges that prosecutors bring. It undermined the presumption of innocence, and it not only undermined the presumption of innocence, it takes and this uncontrolled power that prosecutors have is an animal that undermines our whole judicial system. But the state has never called itself on it. It's a violation of the Constitution itself. And a lot of people don't like to take and think that the government is doing something that violates its own Constitution. Tell Native Americans that. But in any case, when a prosecutor can take and bring charges and then sit down and negotiate the terms of a plea, that's a conflict of interest. There's a conflict of interest. And it also gives the prosecutor the incentive to take and exaggerate the actual crime that's been committed. It creates the practice of bringing charges that are vertical and horizontal. Okay? And so you wind up overcharged. You know, you wind up overcharged only with the prosecutor having the intent to force your defense to come to the table. Now, remind you, the defense is already under budget. Okay, most defense, and when I say the defense, we're talking about the accused representation. Most public servants that are taking cases for indigent persons, people without money, are underfunded from the very beginning. The prosecutor's office is always more funded than they are. They take their funds and they take and further disadvantage the defense by overcharging the person. So instead of us even talking about the actual facts of the case and the actual crime, we are only dealing with the exaggeration. Okay, it's like going into a sales room with a salesperson that's trying to sell you a car. This person done took and marked up the price of the manufacturer way beyond what the manufacturer done recommended that the car be even sold. And this person interferes with the proper, sale and manufacturing of automobiles because of what he's doing at the dealership. That's not to take and put a black eye on the chip, but what I'm trying to point out to you is how this worked and the harm that it caused. Okay, you overcharge a person, and then the other facts of that is, or the effects of it is that the police that took the report is now expected to act in concert with the prosecutor. The prosecutor then exaggerated the charge, so the reporting officers now have to act in concert with the prosecutor. And then it doesn't stop there. The witnesses who are the victims in the case, who reported the crime to the police, also have to take and do the same thing. They're each told by the prosecutor tell the police, well, this is what we're going to have to do to take and try to avert a long trial. So we need you not to take and undermine, this accusation. And you need to let your witnesses know that. So now we got the prosecutor exaggerating, you got the police exaggerating, and then you got the witnesses exaggerating. And you have the state giving all of this a stamp. And when I say the state, I'm talking about our appellate courts who have yet to take and agree that guilty plea practices in this country is not unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. It's not unconstitutional for two parties to get together and to negotiate an agreement, a resolution. That ain't what I'm saying. But I'm saying we have evidence. When you see the number of people that wind up in prison, 94 to 97% of those who are arrested and convicted, 94 to 97% is evidence of coercion. It's evidence of government abuse. And this is where innocence, the presumption of innocence, is even lost in that. It can reinforce the cliche and create the bias that if the police arrested you, you had to do it. You had to commit the crime. Evidence of it is in these guilty pleas. It reflects it. 94 to 97% are pleading guilty. Okay, so that's evidence. We ain't talking about the ones that are still found guilty because the attorney is overburdened with not just simply contesting what should have been the proper evidence in the case, but they have to also hold the prosecutor's feet to those evidence that they brought in excess of that. They can arrest a person for felony murder. It means that there was an underlying felony. So why in the hell you then took and charged him with armed robbery, bank robbery? Those are the felonies. That's what constitute felony murder. You don't have to charge him with that. You only can argue that. You only have to argue that in theory, but they throw all the charges in as well so as to make it difficult for the jury to take and rationalize that the person could be innocent of having committed a particular crime. they throw so many at them that the jury is overwhelmed to say this person had to do something. We going through, you become desensitized once you begin to read all of those laws and you hear all of these accusations. It just wear you down. And then the prosecutor got a little game they play. One of the things I used to do as a jailhouse attorney, I used to ask the guys that would ask me to look at their case, I said, bring me your jury verdict form. You should always do that, Matt. You should always ask to see and pay very close attention to the jury verdict form. They do this semantic game. They first start off with the first charge and they say guilty or not guilty. Guilty or not guilty. Or they just list the underlying offense, but they never say not guilty anymore on the underlying offense. So as to suggest if he or she is not guilty for the primary offense, then he or she is guilty for one of these lesser offenses. So they never use the word not guilty anymore when they line up the underlying offense. I used to find multiple cases like this. And they have the nerve to say, if it wasn't raised earlier, is a procedural argument. It's not a procedural argument. This fact is always supposed to be put forth to a jury. It's always supposed to be put forth to the jury. The jury is the determining factor of your innocence and guilt. And if the question is not placed before them properly, is a faulty verdict. And a faulty verdict is unconstitutional. It's not a procedural issue. And they done reduced that to a procedural issue in the state of Michigan and quite possibly in many other places of the country.
Well, that's why I love.
That is good. That's good. Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, I was just gonna say that's why I love about Darrell Brooks' trial, because out of all of that, at the end of it, he brought up the fact that jury nullification, right? Like the jury can't even be notified that they have the power of nullification. That is stricken from the jury. So why is the jury not privy to the power that they hold? Jurors don't even understand why the courtroom rise for them. They have no clue. They have no clue why even the judge stands for this person. They have no understanding that they are the most powerful entity in that courtroom, and that's why everybody rises for them. Why is the jury not allowed to know that?
Attorney Mack, you want to talk about that? The
well,
jury.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to be sure for the benefit of the people that are listening, understanding what jury nullification is. Jury nullification is where the jury can decide the verdict based outside what the judge tells them the law is. I mean, for example, let's say you have a person that is accused of murder, okay, and the state puts on its case, and the defense attorney says, well, this is a really good kid. Don't send this person to prison. Maybe the state has proven this person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but don't send them to prison because they had a hard life. They was abused by mama, abandoned by daddy. And so in the state of Michigan, jury nullification is illegal. I've been warned not to even fringe on that, because in my arguments with the jury, I talk about fundamental justice. And, the judges I've been kind of Washington County said, okay, Mr. Mack, you can talk about fundamental justice, but don't get on that thing about justice says that they should acquit this person, even though they feel he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So, and really the theory behind that is actually a good one, because you don't want, for example, a black man in the South being convicted because of the color of his skin. In other words, if the state has not proven, I'm just using black, beyond a reasonable doubt, you've all seen the movie To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That is a clear case of jury nullification. Okay, Okay, they didn't prove every element of rape in that case. That girl was a terrible witness. Okay, and but they convicted that man anyway because of the color of his skin and the time. So anything can be abused. Any good intention thing can be abused.
But what Mr. Edward was saying, right, is I don't even know if you can put it in words. That is the key fundamental aspect of what people have to understand when it comes to this prison industrial system is exactly what that man laid out, right? Because that is the scheme. That is where it all begins at. And what I'm trying to fight for, when I get into the room with these representatives, they all want to shut me down. They won't even come into the room with me anymore because I don't want to talk about good time. I don't want to talk about parole. I don't want to talk about any of these things that these people already have these convictions. I want to stop people from getting convictions. And that is where the conversation changes, because some of my, as Charity keeps asking, some of my solutions are, we're going to strip some of this immunity off you, Mr. Prosecutor, and we're going to start holding you accountable for all these charges you're putting on me. So if you slap 15 charges on me and I'm found guilty on not 10 of them, then I'm coming at you for those ones that I'm found not guilty of because of the detriment that it put me in. And that's going to make these prosecutors think twice about that overcharging, because now they're going to be held responsible to prove these charges that they're putting on people. Not that that Mr. Mack has to disprove them, but I have to prove them. That is the presumption of innocence. I'm putting a charge on somebody that I have to prove. You know what I mean? That is, to me, that is what the justice system is supposed to be about. Not that I'm going to slap 20 charges on you and you have to prove that you're not guilty on all 20 of them. And then I'm going to come to you later and say, you know what? Let's scratch 15 of these, take this plea right now, and we'll just be done with it. Who's not going to take that? Again, that's extortion.
Right. Go ahead, Edwin.
And J Love, what we're talking about actually happened to an attorney here in the state of Michigan. He was charged with over 20 plus crimes, but he wound up getting acquitted for every last one of them. And the way he done that is that he understood the system. He had the money to do it. The rest of us don't have that kind of money. He took and began to take and buy media time and commercials, and he took and changed the image that he knew the prosecutor was going to use to take and convict and sentence him. So he changed his image in the media. He tried to shut him down with his commercials and everything. The judge said, hey, that's his right, that's his freedom, as long as he don't make reference to this case and these charges. So he knew exactly what he was doing. In fact, he went in saying that, hey, I actually committed what they said I did. But other people's done it and they never prosecuted them. This is a selected prosecution. That was Jeffrey Figer. It was the single most expensive trial in the state of Michigan. No one has spent that much amount of money on a criminal prosecution than he had to defend himself. And no one had took and won against that many darn charges. This man had, we're not talking about a dozen. There was more than 24 charges against the man, and he won all of them. They said that he gave money to one of the presidential candidates. And he said, yeah, I done it. He said, but I ain't the only one that done that. Somebody that worked in his law office went and was disgruntled and went to disclosing and saying that, hey, all of us was giving money and we was told to take this money and to give it to the candidate. But it all came from this one person, And so the prosecutors and them brought charges on him that reflected that. But he won those cases because as an attorney, he understood it. And he understood what the only thing that you can win with this is, one, you got to deal with the cultural biases that already is delivered through our media, and you have to take and spend money. We don't have that. We don't have the means as an individual person, but this is what we're doing as activists. We are taking and trying to change the narrative. And that's what very successfully. We need to change the narrative. And one of the narratives is that we have to be concerned about who we elect locally. That affects our prison population.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That affects our prison population, who we affect locally. We got more people that recidivitate in county jails than do state prisons. But we never talk about the recidivism rate in county jails. We only talk about the recidivism rate in state prisons. You know? But there is a larger recidivism rate for people's going in and out, the same people going in and out of the county jail. If we were to correct that, which deals with social issues, because the people that are coming and going in and out of the county jails have substance use problems. There are those that are homeless. There are those that are underemployed or unemployed. There are those who are homeless, who live out on the street. Okay, these are the type of people that come and go in and out of the county jail. They should never be in that space anyway. They should never be there. They represent social issues that we have legitimized to be prosecuted. County jails, like in Detroit, we built a new county jail off the backs of people that the legislature had never took and approved to be in that county jail. So yes, we need attorneys and law firms like the Detroit Justice Center, that is what they consider themselves to be movement attorneys, where they are willing to give their legal expertise to organizations and movements to take and bring about the changes that you advocate for, the changes that you were pushing to make real. Like you guys came on and you talked about this green light thing and the shot spotter. The Detroit Justice Center recently filed lawsuit, probably within the last 24, 48 hours. They filed a lawsuit against the city of Detroit, said that the police never showed any evidence of why this thing is even valid or relevant, or how it would work. And they supposed to have been given a public hearing to do this. And they never done it, but now all the money is being spent. So yes, we can change the narrative. We allow sheriffs to create conditions in county jails for people who are presumed to be innocent, pretrial detainees. We endorse them to create environments in a county jail worse than in a state prison, and we have convicted felons in prison. But people are assumed to be innocent in the county jail, and a judge have to have the damn nerve to say, did anybody coerce you when you took your plea? Did you not see the conditions over in the damn county jail? Do you not know what those conditions are? Those conditions are coercive in themselves. And so how could you not say that guilty pleas do not violate our Constitution? So these are the type of things, and we put too much damn tension on the front door of the judicial system. We done put all these procedural protections and so forth, but we ignore the back door. Even after the person done served his or her time and come home, we validate the person continuously being, his or her autonomy, their self-choice, being governed by the state for 2 or 4 years. We give them the right for this parole system. They tell you, you can't have this kind of job. You can't live. You got to put a tether on your foot. So we looking at the front door, but we ignore this back door. And what that does is, when the state continue to take and control you after you done served the punishment for the crime that you supposedly done created, they then continue to take and govern you after you are released from prison. So that 2 years that you on parole, it demoralizes you to where you are now in what we call
a hamster wheel.
You slow down. And so what happens is, at that point, you never get anything did. You never realize anything else again. after having been controlled for 2 years. And this should be part of the proportionality of sentencing. Attorneys should be bringing this up to the court. They say, look, my client is going to be on parole, but even after he's out off parole, that record is going to follow him. We got to quit allowing judges to say, well, that's part, he shouldn't have committed the crime. No, it's still part of a collective punishment. It's still part of a collective punishment if you can't buy a home, if you can't buy a car, if you can't get a damn job, if you can't get health care, if you can't go to school and father your life, if you cannot take and be a citizen again. Right. Your rights of a citizen is forever reduced it. And attorneys have to start taking an argument to courts and saying that this should be part of the proportionality of sentencing. You shouldn't just be looking at the front end. You should look at the back end. You should put somebody on the stand that have been in prison and got out of prison and then went through the effects of taking and trying to return back home and have him to put on the record or her on the record of what their lives look like, and then use that as an argument in the appellate court. If they get tired, don't you get tired. Continue to drive it home. Our attorneys have to take and find some creativity that's lost today. And that's why we need social workers. That's why we need people that know the effects of these things that we are doing. And thank you again. I apologize.
Thank you. So, Attorney Mack, yeah, we're getting ready to leave. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate every one of you guys for joining me today and everyone who's been viewing. I hope you guys have shared this. Attorney Matt, what do you want to leave us with before you go?
Well, the thing of it is this. What Baraka said is so true. And see, that's why we have to take advantage of people that run for office who have that kind of experience, okay? You have to start injecting into the system, just like an infusion of blood. People that have been there, people that know what it's like. And that's why I applaud any prosecutor who wants to be progressive enough to open up their office to people with a criminal justice experience. You need these people as advisors, as counselors, as investigators, as conviction, integrity, and expungement unit personnel. You need that. And I want you to understand something. You talk about some wrong. Remember, I deal with this dynamic every day. As an attorney, I can pick a jury, but as a person with a criminal justice experience, I cannot sit on one. Okay, so we've got that baked into the cake in the state of Michigan. So when we talk about social justice movements, the things we need to be targeting, we need to stop the barrier from people with a criminal justice experience from sitting on these juries. You understand? Stop it, stop it, stop it, okay? So we will continue to highlight the hypocrisy. We will continue to highlight the systemic racism. We will continue to highlight the systemic classism as long as it exists and as long as God gives us the ability to breathe and talk. So y'all keep swinging for the fences. You know, I love you. God bless y'all, you know, and it ain't over till we win. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
That's the rule.
So I want to leave us with this quote that I found. Our world is in which justice is accidental and innocence no protection. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. I also want to add that our justice warriors who just recently passed away, Earl Burton, his service, he had a visitation today. His service is tomorrow for those who want to attend. This is the information. I will post it on the Justice for Gerard page as well. And also the information for Danny Jones. His services is going to be also posted on the page. We want to send love and condolences to the families and everyone who are friends and advocates and everyone who are connected with them. And if we don't have anything else, Reverend Tia.
This was just such a powerful, powerful show tonight. And it's not a conversation. I can't even say it's a show because this is not rehearsed. But I do want to just admonish, well, help to lift up people and let them know that the power is still within you. And get the knowledge. Get all the knowledge. I know you've gotten a lot of information tonight. Get knowledge about yourself too. And be knowledgeable when you speak so that you are speaking truth, and realize the oneness that is existing with everybody. And that oneness is more powerful than us being separated. And we have more that is alike than we have that is different. And if we can stand upon these truths and stand upon righteousness, we win. You already win.
Yes, Reverend Tia. And Thomas?
Well, thank you, Miss J Love, for having me on the show. Thank you for this powerful discussion. I love being part of discussions like this. But my message is just people, like, if we don't come together on one thing, right, just one thing, and show that we have the power. Take what happened with the truckers out in Colorado. I always use this example. Look what those truckers did when they sentenced that man to 110 years, right? What we witnessed was the power of what unity can do. When those truckers shut down, they took 100 years off this man's sentence 6 months later. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but those people knew they had to get those truckers back to work. When we come together, we're the boss. We're the boss. That's what I leave. We have to unite.
Yes, like what Sam says all the time. When we organize, we win. So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Great that you joined us. We appreciate you. And for everyone, we'll see you next week, 6 p.m., turning a moment into a movement.
Hey, can I share something with Mac before we go?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Mac, I took and submit those applications to at least 6 law schools yesterday. Okay? So I'm give me 3 years and I'm gonna be pushing you around in the courtroom, man.
Hey, man, look here. Hey, speed it up, brother. I don't know how much longer I can last out here, man.
All right, all right.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right.
Hey. My love to Danny and
okay.
Another brother, both of them are my brothers.
Good night, everyone.
God bless y'all.